everyone, welcome back to Hannah Worldwide and Friends, the podcast about living abroad. Please share it with your friends and family if you like it. You never know who needs to hear all about living abroad, going overseas, traveling the world, and be a little bit encouraged. Thank you so much for listening and for following around. I really appreciate you all. Hi everyone. In today's episode, I want to shine a little bit light on the whole topic of difficulties when you live overseas. I know it's nicer to hear all the positive things and the excitement and the fun, but there are also quite a few points which are really hard when you are living by yourself overseas, and sometimes even when you live or move with your family overseas and leave people behind. So I would like to have this as a topic today so that it's authentic and it's real, because living overseas, especially by yourself, is not always fun. First of all, it's the whole visa topic. No one of your family or friends, unless they have experienced exactly the same and they moved to exactly the same country, no one really can help you with visa applications, filling out the forms correctly, doing any sort of this stuff. They will not be able to help you out. So you're pretty much dependent on yourself and to figure it out. And it's not always as difficult, and people will be around to help you out, and you can ask questions on the internet. But in general, your family won't be able to help you out like they might have been when you were at home. So that's a whole thing. Generally with applications or forms or anything, once you're in your new country, no one back home will be able to help you out with that because no one has any experience. So that's something you are pretty much on your own, unless you're lucky and you have people around you who have been through the same. But even then, it's different for everyone. It's different for someone from Germany. It's different from someone from another country. So in that case, I think you are on your own with, or you're smart and you're looking for an immigration advisor. They will be really good in helping you out with what documents you need, how to fill them out properly. And usually it's the way most people go about it. The next point is, once the excitement of traveling around or anything, once you settle down, you will realize that you will have problems you used to have in your own home country. Once you are settled and you have your everyday life and you have your routine, there will be same things. It will be sometimes boring. It will be stressful at work. It will be hard to communicate. It will be difficult sometimes to understand what another person wants. And you have to learn the language potentially. You have to learn new cultural things. And you have to just generally adapt. That can be quite tricky for some people as well. Also, if you're an introvert, and yes, also introverted people decide to move overseas, especially then it will be quite difficult for you to make friends easily, because not everyone is going out of their way to connect with you. So if you want to have new friends, you kind of need to make a move a little bit as well, which can be a really big problem for people who are introverted. Also, if you have any kind of emotional things going on, you have a partner and you have problems in your relationship, you have a fight, or you have a broken heart because of someone, then it is really hard for your family and friends to be there for you. Especially, I can say from experience, they want to be there for you, and the hardest bit for them as well is to know you are suffering and they can't do anything about it. They won't be able to just quickly come over, or not in many occasions. And they also are not able to just give you a call anytime, especially when it's like in my case, that day and night is swapped around. Like for me, I'm literally at the other end of the world from Germany. So when it's night there, it's day here. And when it's night here, it's day there. So it's not always possible to give a call immediately. So for me, when I had some issues emotionally in the beginning, I knew my mom was really suffering because she knew I wasn't feeling well and she couldn't do anything about it. And for me, I knew I wanted the emotional support and the comfort of my family and my closest friends, but I had to sort it out a little bit by myself, which led to me feeling quite lonely at times. And even if you have made new friends already, sometimes all you need is someone who already knows you for like 10, 15 years, or is just really knowing who you are and have seen you in your worst times. So in that case, it can be quite difficult to not be around. And I have, as mentioned, experienced it myself. And I know it was super hard for me not being able to constantly call my friends to catch up with them, to talk through it. And I'm, for example, a person, if I have problems, I need to talk about it, to kind of digest it and to process it and to understand it and to find solutions. So in that case, it can be really tricky to actually, have that kind of help, because no one will be able to immediately be there. And I remember at that time, there was nothing more than I was hoping for someone, my friends or my brother or my mom, to come over and to spend some time with me. But also choosing New Zealand was a little bit of a tricky one in that case, because even if someone wants to help me, the flight alone is already like 2 days. And if you really make all the way over here, then you also want to spend at least 4 to 5 weeks on this side of the world. Otherwise, it's not quite worth it. And not everyone can afford that. The time of the year and also annual leave wise, it's not always possible to go immediately. So if you need immediate family or friend support, that's not really happening. And in general, you will feel lonely at times. And that's okay. Not saying when you are alone, you will feel lonely, because being alone and feeling lonely is also quite different. But I can tell that you will have moments where you just really need that one friend, your mom, just whoever in that moment would comfort you the most. And it's not possible. And that can really lead to feeling lonely. What I have noticed as well is in the beginning I was traveling around. So I was like a backpacker for the first 3 months. And I loved it. It was great. But I also met people at the hostel and I was traveling with them. So I was not really alone. Most of the time I was being with people and I have built great new connections. But I realized once I had to start my job and I moved into Hamilton as a city and I had to find a flat, I was all of a sudden all by myself. And I remember I drove all the way from Oakland. I had to buy a car by myself and I drove all the way down to Hamilton and I had to sort out a flat. And once I had that flat, I moved in and it was a new unit and there was nothing in it. I had a bed, but I didn't have like sheets or a pillow or a blanket. There was no cutlery. There was just nothing really in the house. And I remember that was the very first time of the whole going overseas experience where I felt really lonely, because I was constantly with people. I was surrounded by people whenever I wanted to. And in that moment, I wasn't. I was all by myself. I had to go out. I had to buy everything I need. I had to prioritize things. And I was just by myself. And from being constantly with people to being all by yourself, that made me feel really lonely. And I remember I had a really good cry on that day. But soon flatmates would move in. So I started building connections with them and I started being with people again. And so that kind of will pass as well. But I remember that was a tough night and a couple of days for me where I really had to get used to being just by myself and being happy and okay with that. And I have to admit, I'm not really a person who loves being alone all the time. Not that I'm not okay with myself, but I just enjoy way more spending time with people, going out and building connections. And therefore, that was a tough one for me. Another big one, and especially also for me, and most of the things I say here are out of my experience. So there might be people who say, okay, this is not how I felt, and that's not really what I would think is the right thing. So that's always out of my perspective. I struggle a lot with missing out on things which are going on back home with my family, with my friends, and that's something where it really hits me hard sometimes. Most of my friends have babies now, and that's great. And I always wanted to be the auntie, but now I'm the auntie who lives so far away. So I'm pretty much missing out on all these milestones for my friend as like having a baby, having a family on their own, and just growing into motherhood and needing a friend sometimes to talk to. I'm not really there. Yes, we can have a phone call, we can have a video chat, we can have voicemails, but that's just not always enough. And also, not being able to see the children of my friends or cousins growing up is feeling really like you're missing out on a lot, like little milestones for their children. Or you want to be the auntie, but you will always be known as the auntie who lives far away. So they will not really build proper connection with you, which is also really, really sad. I always wanted to be a great auntie. I wanted to be the fun auntie and the one who is like teaching little things, naughty stuff. And I'm just not really there. So it's also really sad once I actually go over, the children are not really knowing who I am. And that really hurts at times. And of course, they are still very young. They might get used to it, but it's not as easy. Also, missing out on your family and friends' celebrations or achievements. There's so much you want to enjoy with your friends when you are there. You want to celebrate their little achievements. You want to celebrate when they have milestones like a wedding. And if you live so far away, that's often not possible. You can make your way sometimes over to join a wedding or to join an event. But often there are also the little things which would need your input, or they would really appreciate you being there and present, and you just can't do it. I remember I had a few instances now, since I'm here, and I'm here now for nearly 5 years, where I missed out on big celebrations, the big 30 of most of my friends. I wasn't able to be there. And some weddings I would love to go to, or I would have loved to see and join. I couldn't be there. Also, sometimes things where I wanted to be there for my friends, knowing they go through a really tough time, I couldn't. One of the biggest things, or one of the bigger things for me, was when my best friend lost her father. And that was for me like knowing that was the worst which could possibly happen to her. And the reason to be the best friend is like being able to be there for the person who needs you the most in that moment. And I wasn't able to be there. I was so far away, and naturally she was in a state of mind where she didn't want to talk to anyone. And therefore, hearing the news from another friend and not from herself was hitting me hard, because I knew that she couldn't communicate with me, and I understood. But it was just, I felt so not connected, because I had no option, no possibility to contact her without not respecting that she wanted to be alone and not having any contact. She would just let me know that she would contact me as soon as she could, like once she feels mentally okay or strong enough to be able to communicate with me. But that took probably 3 months. And these 3 months were the hardest because I wanted to be there for her. I wanted to give her a hug. I wanted to listen to her. I wanted to just whatever she would have needed in that moment, to sort out stuff for her, to take things from her so that she doesn't have to deal with everything by herself. And I wasn't able to. That was really, really hard for me. And of course for her as well. I knew she was really, really hurt, not just by the fact that she just lost her father, but also by the fact that her best friend wasn't able to be there. I know she's really understanding and she has no hard feelings or anything, but for me, I felt so guilty, and that was really bad. So these things can happen. Also, another really, really big one for me was that I knew that my auntie was sick, very sick with cancer. And I knew that you never know how long people still have with that disease. But then COVID hit. So COVID is a whole story for itself. Like, it's a completely different point to talk about. But I wasn't able to go overseas to see my family, to see my auntie before she passed away. And what was really, really hard was that I was planning to go over. But then because of COVID, everything got pushed. So instead of going every second year, I haven't seen my family for 3.5 years, which wasn't planned. And then finally I was able to book in a flight for August. And I was super excited, and I told my auntie, I will be there soon. I can finally see you again. And I knew she wasn't feeling well. It wasn't that she was looking like she would get better or she would be healed or anything like that. But she was still able to talk. She was able to move. And then I remember in June, I got the message that she could feel that she wouldn't make it that long anymore. And that was really tough, knowing for me that I already booked the tickets for August, and it was so close to see her one more time, to say goodbye, to give her a hug, to just have that connection. And I have to say, my family, like, we are all really close. Hearing that she thinks that we should say goodbye now and that we only could have a phone call, a video chat, that was tough. And so it actually happened that she passed away after that phone call we had, and we said our goodbyes, and we said that we love each other. And 1 week after she passed away, I was not able to see her in person before. And I felt really guilty not being able to make it over there earlier. No one would blame me for anything, or there was nothing like that. But just what you do to yourself and how you feel with yourself is just so different. So I wasn't able to go. She passed away. And I was also not able to go to the funeral, which was pretty quick after that. And I wasn't able to mourn with my family. I wasn't able to be there for them, especially for my 3 cousins. And yeah, I feel really, really close to them and to my uncle. And I knew my grandparents, my dad, everyone was struggling a lot. And I know I couldn't have done much, but just being there I would have thought makes a difference. And so all I could do was in August go over and actually see the grave. There was no stone, nothing. There was just the soil and flowers. And my family sent me photos of the funeral and of all the flowers, and they told me the stories that there were heaps of people and that it was beautiful for what it was and peaceful. But I realized now, because I only saw the grave, what my brain is doing now since I'm back in New Zealand is pretty much pretending it didn't happen. It's telling me sometimes like, yes, it happened. You said goodbye on the phone, but then I'm so far away and I haven't seen her for so long. So my brain can trick me easily, telling me she might be just on her holiday. That's why you didn't see her in August. Or when you go over next, she might be somewhere else. That's why you don't see her. Like, it's not as real. I sometimes have to remind myself that it actually happened. And on one hand, it might be good for me, for my emotional state, and to cope with it, because I can just move on and, live my life. But that was one of the hardest things. And knowing that my grandparents, for example, are also quite old now, not always healthy anymore, knowing that it can happen to them anytime as well, not knowing if you have seen them for the last time when I went back, not knowing if you will be able this time to go over before it happens. You have to be okay with that. You have to be making your peace with the possibility that these things can happen and you will be not there. And I think it was harder for me to make that peace with my auntie. It is a little bit easier because I know my grandparents have lived their life. They had a good life and they are old now. But it will be hard again once it happens. So all I'm trying to do is going over as often as I possibly can to say goodbye, to say what I have to say, to tell them I love them, and to just get it all out and be okay when it actually happens. And you also never know, especially, and now I come to that topic, with a pandemic, you are not allowed to move, to go overseas, to travel. You have to stay in your home. So even if I would want to go back home, I couldn't. Even if something really bad would have happened, I could not go home and then come back to New Zealand. I also wasn't a resident at that time, and they wouldn't have let me back into the country, and it would have been really, really hard. I'm so grateful that nothing bad happened to my family during that time, and that I was okay being so far away and not being able to go overseas, even though it caused anxiety, and it's not a great feeling because you feel so stuck and you are scared that something bad will happen and you can't go. But in my case, I was all good. But there are so many people who have been living overseas, who have had losses because of the pandemic, or who had experienced also loss and couldn't go over and couldn't say goodbye. And this is what really stays with you for a really long time. Experiencing a pandemic when you are living overseas without family and friends, that's also a whole new level of discomfort. And just again, so grateful for the technology nowadays, that you're able to call, that you're able to have videos and all of that. I know everything was quite dramatic, so coming to points which might be a little bit less dramatic. You will also experience things you were so used to at home that you will just realize that you actually miss it when you are away for longer. For example, in my case, I really am a person who loves Christmas. And for me in Germany, Christmas is dark, Christmas is cold, and Christmas has lots of fairy lights, lots of Christmas markets, and it's just beautiful. It doesn't always have snow, but sometimes we do experience snow in Germany for Christmas, but that's really rare and also for us very special. But just having it cold, dark, you snuggle on the couch into a nice blanket with a hot beverage and watch movies, listen to Christmas songs, and have all the lights around you, or going to catch up with friends on a Christmas market and eat all the delicious food there is, that's the part I really miss. And for me, Christmas is also a time of family, all coming together, celebrating, having presents, going to church. That's kind of really traditional for us. And not having that here, having usually warm weather, not always sun, sometimes also rain here in New Zealand, but being in summer in New Zealand on Christmas is taking away the magic and the Christmas feeling, and also not spending Christmas with your family as a traditional person in that sense. Also quite tricky. Like, this is usually the time of the year where I feel more lonely and separated from the people I love. So it's always really nice. What we used to do sometimes, people from overseas, we would all come together and have like a potluck or something where we all would bring some food, and everyone who doesn't have their family there would come and just celebrate as a new international family. So that was really nice, really sweet, but it's not quite the same when you experience a very traditional Christmas. And for some other people, it might be, like for certain people from Asia, might be Chinese New Year, which is very different, or Diwali, which is very different. If you don't have a community and they make it feel like home, then this can become quite a tricky one where you feel really, really lonely, or you just miss it a lot, because there is also certain foods, and that's when I jump to the next one. Food is also a big thing. If certain things are just not existing here in the country you have chosen to move to, you will miss a lot of good food. You will miss certain specialties, and you will miss your favorite stuff, which might not be in that country. New Zealand is so far away, and everything has to be imported, and lots of stuff is just not quite here. So every time my mom sends me a parcel, she's asking me, what are you craving? What would I be able to send over? Which not every food can be sent. It has to be packaged and processed properly. And yeah, it can't just be self-baked stuff, which unfortunately my grandma would always bake the biggest variety of cookies for Christmas. And she would have sent me some, but that's unfortunately not allowed because it's self-baked and you would have to seal it and all of that. So that was a no, unfortunately. But if it's just packaged food from the supermarket, then that's okay to be shipped. And you will realize that certain things you really, really miss. Or if there's anything in particular, like I felt like back home, it was really easy for me to eat really healthy and to have like all the alternatives and to not spend too much money on it. And here I feel like some alternatives, they don't really exist here. And sometimes the price is like through the roof. So I wouldn't even buy it, even if it exists here. So these things, I'm pretty sure everyone who's living overseas kind of has that one dish or that one ingredient or that one snack they really miss from home. Even if it's just for nostalgia because it reminds you on your childhood or something like that. I'm sure everyone has one. Last but not least, a thing I want to mention, and I'm sure there are still a lot of other things other people could add on to that, but for me, I just want to take that as the last point, is sometimes you have certain perks in your own country. Every country is doing certain things very different. May it be political, may it be from the systems. And what I've learned is that Germany usually has a really, really good health system. So everyone is health insured and we are pretty much good backed up. We have a lot of experienced doctors and professionals. And I always felt really, really safe and well looked after in my country. Here in New Zealand, they also have a system which is with ACC, and you wouldn't just be stranded, but it is very different from the health system back home. And if I could choose, I probably would totally prefer the health system over in Germany. So if anything majorly would happen, I probably would still hope to go back over not just for the professional side with the doctors and all of that, and the knowledge, but also just to have your family comfort when you're in a really horrible situation when it comes to your health. So in that case, that can be tricky. Also, retirement, when you live overseas and you pay tax in that country. In my case, I don't get any points for the retirement system we have, so I'm not eligible for anything like that. Here, I know New Zealand has something like KiwiSaver, and that's a little bit of like either you can use it for your house deposit or for retirement or for something like that. And it's good that there is something in place, or there are things which are existing, but very different from where I'm from as well. And yeah, that can be also something where you are like, okay, that's not always the best thing. Like you will see it might have disadvantages or something like that. Yeah, so if there are any other things you would like to add, please just contact me or leave a message in the comment section and on Instagram, or however you want to interact with me. And I can bring some stuff up, or if you want to be part of the podcast and you want to share your story, you want to share your ideas and your side of the things, please just get in touch with me. I would love to hear more stories and more perspectives as well. So thank you so much for listening again, and I hope you enjoyed the episode, even though it was more on the sadder side, but I think it's just also as important to mention as the positive things on living overseas. And I hope I didn't make anyone not want to go overseas anymore, because I think the positives still overweigh the negatives. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it anyways. Thank you so much for listening, and see you next time. Bye!